Hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's episode of Thriving NP. I'm your host, Megan, and today I am back chatting about fun and important topics for primary care providers and nurse practitioners. And today's topic is going to really be about burnout and decreasing stress in our environment. I know that pretty much everyone can relate to this, so I'm excited to kind of share some tips that I have been working on over the last, honestly, like year plus, and really focusing on improving my quality of life and becoming a happier provider overall. So there has been a lot of changes that have been happening, and you might have noticed that our name has changed from To Me Time to Thriving NP, the Thriving Nurse Practitioner. And that is for a few reasons. One, I just wanted to be more reflective of my brand and make it pretty known that it's for nurses and nurse practitioners, especially if you're doing like a quick search, you might find us. And then the second reason, and probably the most important reason, is because I started a mentorship company called Thriving NP, and I wanted my brand to be congruent and have everything have the same name. So you can check out my company at thrivingnp.com and kind of see what it's about. It's basically like a mentorship program and a community program for nurses and nurse practitioners going through transitions or just looking to decrease burnout and stressors. So check that out, and I'm sure we'll be chatting more about it in the future as well. So also just that all has happened, but I took pretty much like a year off of podcasting and doing anything like branding for myself. And that is for a few reasons. One, I was feeling a little burned out last year and just like overwhelmed by how much things there were to do outside of work and inside of work, and a lot of like really great things and not so great things that happened, and something just had to give. And so that was this, unfortunately. But I feel I feel really excited to chat about kind of what we've been working on over the last year. But some positive things that had happened is I got married, and so I was just planning a wedding, planning and managing family, and a lot of travel happened. My sister had a baby, so that was really exciting. I ended up getting in a car accident and having a concussion, and the concussion lasted for almost a month, and I couldn't work for about 3 to 4 weeks. And so that was like a big change for myself and for it was honestly like a wake-up call for me that I knew our job was very cognitively demanding, but is it cognitively demanding? And if you are just not on top of your game for whatever reason, like it makes it 10 times harder. I definitely had a lot of symptoms that affected me and affected my work. I could not look at a screen. I couldn't listen to like music or loud noises. For like 3 weeks, had to like very much so limit my physical activity. That was something I've never experienced before. So that was definitely a big change. So anyways, between all of that, I found that I just wasn't really taking good care of myself after that, because I was like so stressed about my work and trying to find a way to manage all the stress and all this burnout. So I did make a couple changes that I think would be helpful for other people. And I now, like 6 to 8 months into it, I feel like a lot better about it. Yes, it's not perfect, but it's definitely a move in the right direction. Now, I do want to say that people who experience burnout, it is not like a one quick fix. It is something that you're going to have to work at pretty much constantly. I would say that anybody, regardless of burnout, anybody that's in like a caregiving role or works with people or has a high stress job, there is many steps that individuals need to take in order to decrease that overall stress. And there are things in healthcare that are out of our control. We all know that. And these are things that we cannot change unless we have a big change in our job or have a big career shift, which for some people, that's what's needed. So if you are in a role or like a very typical clinical setting, there are things that are just going to be out of your control, and you have to work on what's within your control to change to improve your quality of life in your practice. So things that are not likely within your control is how many patients you see per day, if there's part of how that's built into your system. Your charting system, if you have my chart messages, that is not going to go away. It's just something that's there that you're going to have to manage. Having not enough time in your day. Like, we are already starting our day with not having enough time to complete the tasks that we need to do that are expected of us in an 8-hour period or 9-hour period is just not possible to do that. So understanding that is an unrealistic expectation for us to do. And also just the whole landscape of healthcare right now and making everyone happy. It just can't happen. So understand that. Now let's focus on like what is in our control. And there's a lot that's still within your control. So one, I always say recognize how you feel and understand how you feel and do something about it. Don't just continue to ignore it, because that's where we run into a big problem with burnout. So today I'm going to chat about 3 things that I really think were helpful for me and helpful for other people. And I also want to say that this is not individualized to one person. I am not the only nurse practitioner out there that feels this way. I know for certain I'm not. And I have many colleagues of all types of advanced practice. I have physician colleagues, nurse practitioner colleagues, nursing colleagues that feel very similar, and in different fields also feel very similar. So you're not alone out there, and it's about time that we all work together and start speaking up so we can actually make some like positive changes happen. So the 3 points I'm really going to focus on are prioritizing self-care and managing your stress response and closing your stress loop, which we'll talk about. The second thing is making quality workplace improvements that serve you and your needs. And 3 is mentorship. So those are the 3 things I'm just going to talk about today. So the first one is prioritizing self-care, because I think that's like the easiest and most relatable thing for me and for other people. So there's some people out there that might not know what burnout is. And if you don't, I feel jealous that you don't know what that is. So I hope it stays that way. But basically, burnout is any type of physical or emotional or mental exhaustion caused by a state of prolonged stress. Now, everyone's burnout can look different, and burnout will look different constantly for every single person. And you might not be fully like in a burnout crisis, but you are going that way towards burnout if things don't change. So that might be feeling fatigued all the time. You might be getting sick. You're not able to sleep. You have like a sense of negativity, resentment, detachment from how you feel about your workplace or your job, feeling dread, having brain fog, irritability, feeling impatient, frustration about minor stressors. And then you have things like bodily distress. What I mean by that is those are people that get like stomach upset, they get chronic headaches, they might feel depression, they might have weight gain. I mean, all types of things that happen from chronic states of stress and poor health. And I think most healthcare providers can identify with at least one of these things, regardless, like on a daily basis, regardless of technically a definition of burnout. So that is the overall definition of burnout. Now it's kind of funny because I actually like last week I was traveling and coming back, and I listened to the audiobook Burnout. It's called The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Dr. Emily and Amelia. I actually didn't even know this came out in 2019. I knew nothing about it. I was just like reading it kind of for fun, and it had been on my audiobook list. Anyways, it was the only one that I had available to listen to on this flight. So I listened to it. And like there was an interesting like takeaway points that I read about. And one of them was just about like the stress cycle and closing the stress loop. And I finally was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I had to do or learn. I had to learn how to do that. And that's like what I had personally been working on over the last couple of months, or really the last year plus, to try to figure that out since I've actually transitioned into practice as a nurse practitioner. So for those of you who don't know what it is, it's basically completing the stress cycle. I actually didn't really know what that was until I read this book, and it kind of put it into practice for me. So completing the stress cycle to relieve your brain of the actual physical stress, to say, it's okay, I am now safe, I'm not in this physical state of stress. And basically the whole book's about how if you don't do that, that's really what causes this state of chronic stress and can make things worse if you don't like close that loop of stressors. So what does that mean to close your loop? So commonly, exercise is just like the first one that people talk about the most because it's the easiest to do. And actually it's very well researched and studied and like very effective for people. And of course, there's people who can exercise or maybe don't have the time to do that, and their time constraints are different. And there's other things that can close that stress loop, and that's things like affection. They even mentioned like hugging for 20 seconds, or laughter, or crying, or having a nice phone call with somebody. Then they also mentioned like muscle tension release exercises, which I thought was like kind of neat to do as well, because that's something that I think we've all done at one point in our life that can be helpful. And so everyone's a little bit different, and what works for them is going to be different. So what worked for me that I didn't even know that was part of this was that I always knew that exercise was something that really made me happy. And basically my self-care was tanking last year, in the sense that I was so stressed out. There's so many things happening in my life. I just found that my priority went to how can I get my work done first. And so my priority was to stay at work late, to close my notes, to get all my labs, do everything, get my inbox down to as close to zero as possible before I left every day. And that's just what worked for me last year over the last couple months. But then I found I just wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't working out. I was spending too much time at work. By the time I got home, I was like miserable because I basically had no time for me all day. And I just like wasn't feeling great about myself. So I knew I needed to make a change. So what worked for me is exercising and just like prioritizing my exercise. And for me, that meant I needed to change my schedule. What I mean by I need to change my schedule is I literally signed up for a class, group fitness class, that I had to be out of work by 5:30 in order to make it on time. And if I didn't make it on time to my 5:45 class, I would get fined $15. And so for me, if anybody knows me, and most people feel this way, I am not going to spend a cent of my hard-earned money and like hours that I spent working on something as silly as like a late fee or just not showing up on time. So I physically had to change how my brain worked. Instead of closing everything up at the end of the day, I now had to leave at 5:30 the latest. That means patient care had to stop. I had to finish seeing all my patients on time. I had to make sure I'm on time a little bit more. I had to let things go. You do the most urgent things, and then I closed my computer and I left. And I would go work out. I would spend 60 minutes. I still do this to this day. Spend 60 minutes of exercising, and I come home and I found a few things changed. One, I'm genuinely a lot happier because I took care of my body. I felt better. I'm getting good endorphins from exercising and working out. I feel like I accomplished something. And you know what? I kind of stopped feeling so angry about my work because I just forgot about it. I forgot about it while working out. And so when I come home to my family and I have to cook dinner and do all the things you do after work that we all have to do, I was just genuinely a happier person. And then I also noticed I just wasn't taking as much work home for me. Yeah, some nights I still have to do a little something, but I definitely don't spend that much time because I physically can't. If I'm working out and going to work, I need sleep. Some weeks are tough if I'm going on vacation, but overall, I do this and I found that it has helped me have a better relationship with work. So my work-life balance has improved those days that I go work out after work. Now, that doesn't work for everyone. I know that. But for me, that's just something that worked. I am 0.8 FTE. So I am not full-time. I'm it is considered technically full-time, but I'm 0.8 FTE. So that means I do 4 days in clinic. So 2 of those days I leave by 5:30 minimum to get to my workout class. The other 2 days, one day I work late shift, so I work really, really late, and that's just not feasible. Once I get out of work, I close up the most important things. I spend maybe 30 minutes wrapping up the most important things, and then I leave and I go home. I still have stuff in my inbox, but I just have to be okay with letting that stuff sit there because it's going to have to sit there. Fridays, I stay a little bit later if I have the brain capacity for it. Most of the time, I do all my med refills, the most urgent labs, and I leave, knowing that I'm going to now have to spend some time outside of work charting. And I am okay with that. Most people, I think like the studies say that people spend like 86 minutes of work time or like admin time for every clinic day, like charting time outside of like inbox management, 86 minutes per day. So that's like 4 or 5 hours of work outside of work. That's probably doesn't even include like the 30 minutes I'm spending after work or before work when people come in early, to be honest with you. So that's pretty on par with what I do, to be honest with you. I wish it wasn't true, but it just is. And unless you want to be perpetually behind, there has to be some form of like management outside of work or figuring out that for yourself. So I spend my Saturday, I spend a good chunk of time in the afternoon. I get up, I go work out, I do something for me, and I do spend a few hours cleaning my inbox. I get everything down to 0. I take Sunday off completely, if I can, and I take Monday off completely, if I can. If I'm working on Monday, it's to open my inbox, to only do inbox tasks. I don't pre-chart, I don't do any of that, to make sure it's just manageable for the next day where I show up. Now, this has changed. I never used to have 3 days off in a row, and this is game changing. If you are maybe somebody that works 0.8 and has the luxury where your company allows you to do this and it just works with your schedule to have 3 days off in a row, I think this is like really key. I used to have Thursdays off, and for me, not a lot of people want to have Thursdays off, but I kind of liked it. It was like a break in the week. I had time to catch up, or I just wouldn't do any work because I was staying late on the other days. But my self-care was lacking those days. If I stayed late at work to finish my inbox, I wasn't taking care of myself on those days that I worked versus having that balance. You have to find that balance. So for me, it's more worth it to have a work-life balance, leave inbox, do as much as I can, but not work till 11 p.m., not stay late at work till 8 p.m. No, not do any of that, but take care of my body first and my mental health first, and then show up the next day and hopefully do it again. The second thing I want to talk about is making quality workplace improvements. And this is actually, some of the literature actually says specifically for nurse practitioners. There hasn't been too much study specifically on nurse practitioners and burnout and like what's been helpful. For physicians, it seems to be like their coaching was like a common thing that was recommended, but for NPs, it seemed to be more like quality practice improvement, which made a lot of sense to me. There has been like 2 particular things that I can think of that over the last year I've been really advocating for with other colleagues that I work with to help improve quality of practice at the place where I work. So one thing was that we wanted some type of like note writing system, some type of software to help us write our notes. And primary care, like if you spend a lot of time writing your notes, and a lot of the time it's like for you to help organize yourself, for specialists to understand what's going on. I mean, your notes are important. So having some type of like automatic note writing system would be nice. My company's so great, they actually listened, and we just had our tutorial about this like a month ago, and we're waiting for the go live date. It's not really quite here yet, but there's a lot of pros and some cons to it, but I'm going to do a whole separate video on that. But we really advocated for that because we felt that, hey, like all of us feel this way. It's not just me. I'm not the only person that feels stressed and burned out and like overwhelmed by the amount of physical charting that's happening. But we actually brought a strategic point to the table, and our admin listened. So it was really, really nice to do that. The second thing that we did that was quality improvement is we were, I feel very blessed. I have a mentorship call every other week where I work, where all the nurse practitioners get on a phone call and we speak with another NP that's like in a total different practice somewhere else in the country actually, and we talk about whatever we need to talk about. So some weeks it's about tough patient cases, sometimes it's a mix of both, and sometimes it's like being frustrated, like talking about our stressors at work and how to improve our quality practice. So one of the big stressors that came up is that, hey, we don't feel comfortable necessarily, like half the providers were asking others to cover them for vacation and some people weren't. And we were noticing that people were not getting protected time away from work. So if you had a day off for CME or PTO, nobody wanted to burden somebody else with the amount of physical workload to ask them. So if a couple providers end up covering their own inbox, that only leaves a few other providers that like can cover for each other. So anyways, it was just a bad cycle, and really bad for like mental and physical health and well-being, because if you don't get a break, that's just not good. And it's not a good cycle to get into. So we brought this to, or I brought it to my medical director, and I said, hey, this is the resounding way that most of the NPs are feeling. these are some ways that I have solutions. These are some solutions that we came up with. And these are some of the things that the other organizations around the country are doing to help improve inbox coverage and in-basket management. So it was kind of like a twofold thing. So of course, we can't get somebody to manage our in-basket. We don't work for a company that has the budget for that, or like, unfortunately, we can't really hire somebody to come and do our inbox management while someone's on vacation. So that was kind of like out of the question. What solution they did end up coming back to the table was putting us in pods. So you have like part-time and like more full-time providers in different pods, and you are supposed to find coverage within those pods. It is expected that you're going to agree to coverage, and you get an additional 2 hours of admin time a week in the morning, where your schedule is blocked in the morning before your day starts, where you can do inbox management for whoever you're covering for on vacation. So that was really nice. I was like, wow, people, they actually listened. So your company will listen to you. And especially if you have powers and numbers, if everyone's feeling a pain point or a certain type of way, and there's a better way to do things so that improves your quality of practice, ask. You have no clue how it's going to turn out unless you ask. So that is examples of how to have quality improvement within your organization. And lastly, my third point was about mentorship. And partly why my whole company is about mentorship, but I also have been mentored. I've been a mentee for years now, and it is probably one of the most powerful, underutilized tools that I think all providers have. And I feel lucky to get that space and that time with somebody who's a colleague of mine, or not really like, they don't work with me, or some of them do work with me, but they understand and get what we're going through. And that is more valuable than anything. And sometimes you need to talk through tough cases, and sometimes it's about these bigger picture things. But having somebody that you can trust and go do that understands what you're going through is so important. I think really necessary for somebody that deals with a very high stress job. So think about some type of mentorship, or even like coaching in some type of way. Coach and a mentor are very different, but they have similar goals. A coach basically helps you foster what you want to change, and a mentor can actually like help and give practical advice, specifically if you're within a specific role. So some food for thought: consider mentorship. Maybe ask for mentorship. That is something that is totally doable. Say you are in a practice and you have a lot of advanced practice providers. Maybe negotiating once a month or once every 2 weeks, we get time to have a discussion, a mentorship discussion, where we talk about tough cases and get through some tough topics. And this overall fosters improvement, decreases burnout, improves quality of life. Most people probably have better retention of their providers as well, and happier providers. So those are some other thoughts you can think of. So this is just like the tip of the iceberg to the whole conversation. And again, this is things that just helped me, but hopefully can help somebody else. Now, if you had some other things that have been helpful for you, please comment below. I can hopefully we can maybe do some other follow-up videos. I'll definitely let you guys know how it goes with the software for helping us with note writing, and keep you updated to see if that's actually helped my burnout at all. But anyways, thanks so much for joining today's episode. Again, just wanted to have you all take a look at my website called thrivingnp.com. Again, that's thrivingnp.com. You can also send me an email there. Please share my today's episode with friends and family. You can share it on Spotify and on YouTube. Thanks so much, and we'll see you guys next time on the Thriving NP.